So it's time now to explore the rise of smart mobility here in the UAE, and sharing this exciting development, she just asked a question to our panel. Please welcome Asha Pawar, who is the Manager of Transportation at Masdar City. A very warm welcome.
Good evening, everyone. And this is one of my favorite topics in today's world, which is the rise of smart mobility in UAE. And have you ever thought, why are we talking about smart mobility in today's world? Why does transportation matter so much? So, as you can see, the surface transportation accounts for 64% of the global oil consumption, out of which 27% of energy use, and globally, worldwide, 23% of the CO2 emissions are being generated by the transportation. Here are some of the statistics. As we said, 23% is from the worldwide, and United States itself is contributing to 29%, and if you can see in California, it's 41%. And why in California it is 41%? Because the reliance on public personal mode of transportation is very, very high in California. And also, if you see, there's a pie diagram which shows basically the model split of this mode of transportation. So which contributes more is the light-duty trucks and the medium and the heavy-duty trucks. That is approximately 60% of it is being taken by these light-duty. Although we all are talking about the personal cars, this has to go into the electric fleet. We had a lovely session and where we all were talking about what are the challenges or the benefits of this electric mobility. So going to the next, imagine by 2050, has anyone thought with which rate the population is increasing globally? So by 2050, there will be around 10 billion people in the world, and out of which 68% is projected to live in the urban areas. What does that mean? Anyone can answer from the audience? What does that mean? If the population is growing, what impact it will have? So if you look here, this is going to look like the upcoming world. We'll have more number of cars, more pollution, and we need to put an end to this. So what's more important is, if you see, right now what's happening across the globally is everyone is having their individual cars or personal mode of transport. So more number of cars, more pollution, more traffic congestion, more infrastructure. So it requires a lot of investment in terms of infrastructure, in terms of more materials would be required to build these cars, and what we need to put an end to this. And how we can do that is basically we need to have a shared transit, which means less congestion on streets. So now let's talk about the sustainable transportation. So what's the future of sustainable transportation? So there are, what we have listed is low and zero emission vehicles. The second one is the shared mobility options. And the third one, which is also very important and an upcoming thing, is the autonomous vehicles. So what are the benefits of these transportation modes? So if you see the low and the zero emission vehicles, again, I'm not talking over here specifically about the electric fleet. We are saying low and zero emissions, because we have heard from the previous panel what are the challenges, how we can overcome those challenges for the electric mobility. But we need to see or consider the low and the zero emission vehicles. Why? Because it will release less CO2 emissions. And what does that mean? It will have less pollution, and which means an improved air quality. So moving on to the second one, which is the shared mobility. So the shared mobility is basically less embodied carbons related to vehicles and infrastructure. Hence, if we are having shared mobility transportation solution, that means we require less parking, less infrastructure, and in fact, noise pollution. Nobody's thinking about the noise pollution, but imagine the pollution which is generated by these vehicles. If we are using the shared mobility, it will also reduce the noise pollution And the CO2 emissions and the overall pollution. Imagine nowadays, if you talk to the doctors, they say like, there's a lot of raise in the asthmatic conditions especially in the kids. Why it is happening? Because there's raise in the pollution overall. So that's where shared mobility is very, very important in order to reduce the number of cars. And then imagine, if we are taking the public transportation, that itself, imagine like if you take 42-seater bus, in general, like, 42-seater bus equals to 42 cars. If it's a single occupancy car driven by each individual, that means there will be instead of 42 cars are emitting that CO2 emission versus one bus which is emitting the CO2 emission, it's going to significantly reduce the CO2 emissions by 45% if we are just using only the public transportation. And then overall, globally, it's estimated that, if people use public transportation, it's going to save 37 tons of CO2 annually. And then the third one is the autonomous. I'll talk more about autonomous vehicles because we have been, like, in Masdar city, we have been the test bed to test these autonomous technologies. So autonomous is also why everyone is focusing on autonomous modes. One is inclusivity. Imagine the people of determination. They feel like, they are challenged and they can't take their own personal modes of transport. If we are using an autonomous fleet, then, they feel more inclusive. And also it's safer. In worldwide, so many accidents happen, and the death rate has increased just because people are using this mode of the transportation modes. And if it is autonomous, because they are so precise, so accurate, that, this is going to be the safer mode of transportation if it is autonomous. And last but not the least is also the free time. If you don't have to drive, you will have more free time. So that's one of the best benefit of the autonomous fleet. So if you look into this graph, over here by 2015, we had very, very limited or very minimal electric fleet. And where we are currently, like 2024, as you can see, the green line is basically increasing, and that is like in Europe. Now the electric fleet has really grown up, and also as you can see, the China is also, the electric fleet is increasing significantly. So by 2040, it is expected that 60 million EVs per year will be produced and will be used by people. That's a huge number, I feel. That's where the future is. And we were talking about the shared mobility as well. So if you see the hail mobility, by 2019, there was around 120 to 130 for the shared mobility market, which was capturing. And now by 2030, it's going to increase a lot because in the youth now, it's no longer like what our parents used to think, like I need to have my own personal car, but now people are using a lot of shared mobility options such as e-car and Uber, and there's a lot of things which have come up, and especially during COVID times, people have learned like, okay, it's kind of a dead investment if we just invest in a car and we are not utilizing that car. Imagine 23 hours almost, there's a survey which was done and which says around like 80 to 90% of the time, the car is just stationary, it's not mobile at all. So what does that mean? Do we spend money on a car or not? And that's where now the youth, especially the younger generation, is moving into the shared mobility. They don't like to own their own cars anymore. So let's talk about some of the future barriers which we need to overcome. So there are mainly four. I'll categorize into four barriers which we have to overcome. The first one is the economics, the second is the regulations, third is the technology, and fourth is the materials. So in terms of economics, so we see like over here, like how much $16 billion has already been spent on an autonomous technologies, and why? Like, there's a question normally people ask, like, is it really worth to spend that much amount of money on these autonomous technologies? We can buy so many cars if we have to spend that much amount of money just to buy a car. But yes, it is important. It is important. Why? Because technology has to keep on evolving, growing, and we need to change the change is coming. And until unless we'll not invest on technology, we'll not see the outcome. So there's another one, the regulation. That is also very important. You see over here, in California, they had suspended the cruise autonomous vehicles because there was no regulation as such. So the regulations are also evolving. A lot of people, we have also been engaged with the various authorities like such as Abu Dhabi Police and even the Integrated Transportation Center to come up with the regulations, especially in UAE or / Abu Dhabi, like, how to register. For example, if there's normally people ask, like, if there's an accident with the autonomous, who will be responsible? Whether insurance companies are going to take that bear on them, or is it like the company? So these are the kind of regulation challenges which the authorities are still working on. The third one is materials. I just asked the question in the previous session about the materials, like what happens to material? If imagine the entire fleet converts into electric, how much amount of materials would be required if the current technology still persists, like the electric, the lithium batteries, for instance. So that means we require huge amount of materials to produce this electric fleet. So we probably, instead of focusing on personal cars, we might focus on the trucks and the buses. Or why? Because you saw that from the graph previous where I was showing or demonstrating, like 60% of the CO2 emissions is actually coming from the delivery trucks, from the heavy vehicle trucks. So therefore, we have to focus more on the trucks also. Right now, everyone is talking about personal cars. Nobody talks about, like, what happens to the service delivery trucks. So probably there's a need to focus on other modes of transport as well. So UAE has already set an example, and we said we are the global smart mobility hub. So by saying that, the UAE government is working hugely spending on infrastructure. They're investing money on researches as well, and they are also incentivizing the sectors, various sectors, by promoting, like, how to use the electric fleet, like by incentivizing their customers. Earlier, when the electric fleet was coming in the market, so there was, like, as like free parking spaces, you don't have to pay for the parking, free registration, free insurance. So this is how the government is incentivizing the electric fleet. So also, Abu Dhabi has announced their high-speed trams, robo-taxis, and robo-buses are also in service. These are all autonomous fleet, which operates at a very high speed. Few weeks ago, we had the Drift X, where there was the Formula One races for the autonomous vehicles. So it was quite interesting to see, like, where the technology is going now. So next comes, what do we do in Masdar City? Why we are #1 in the market is basically, if you see, we have been thinking from day one. We have been so agile, our transportation sector, like, what is coming next? So we are always adapting to the future technologies. So we are actually thinking from day one, when it comes like planning, it's not like retrofitting it. So we think from the planning perspective, first of all, like, we have considered several steps how to develop our transportation master plan. So we have considered land use. Why land use is important? Because there has to be a right mix of land use. Imagine if it is just a residential sector, that means everyone has to rush out for school, for their daily needs. Whereas if it's a right mix of the land uses, you don't have to go out of your sector. So that's very important. Then road network. If you over-provide the infrastructure also, that's bad, because then again, it's all resources. It's more and more like, you're investing unnecessary, so road network is very important. Then public transport. So I'll talk about each one of this in our master plan. We have also thought about the walking and cycling. Then we also think about the accessibility to these plots and the parking. So parking also is very important, because finally all these fleet needs to park somewhere. So we have come up with various solutions in Masdar City that there's no need, like, each and every building need to have their own parking. So we have come up with a co-located parking strategy or the shared parking strategy. So this is one of my favorite slides, which says the inverting the pyramid. So the traditional cities, what do they do, actually? They have, like, the cars where they are putting more preference to the cars, and the least preference is given to the walking and the cycling. Whereas when you invert the transportation pyramid, that means you give more preference to walking and cycling, and least preference is given to the cars. That's what we have done in Masdar city. And how we have achieved it. One is like, okay, that's a strategy, that's the principle. But how we have achieved it. So if you see over here, we have divided the entire Masdar city into 9 neighborhoods. So you can see those yellow circles. So these are like, residential or commercial sectors. And in the center of each sector, there are neighborhood centers, which are in the catchment of 350 meters from any public transportation stop. So we have tried to create a multimodal transportation hub within Masdar city. So there are the main Masdar, like transit lines are also passing through the Masdar city. So if you see the blue line, that's the metro. So all the like metro, and then the diagonal one, the red one is the LRT or the BRT, that is diagonally passing through Masdar city. And then there is a big square, that is where the normal standard ITC buses will operate. So you can see, like, when we were doing the master planning or developing our master plan, we have thought about it, like how each and every neighborhood is being well connected with the public transportation. And then in addition to that, also we are thinking about the low emission vehicles. We have been, from the day one, we have never used any fuel like the petrol or the diesel-based cars. We have always been using the zero-emission vehicles, such as electric vehicles or the hydrogen vehicles. And also it's inclusive, so it's free for everyone. Once you enter into Masdar city, because currently the external public transport modes are not available, like metro and LRT is yet to come. However, you can still come to Masdar city by buses. And then once you are within Masdar city, you don't have to take your own car. That's the beauty of Masdar city. I would invite everyone to come and experience Masdar city, like, how we have come up with these solutions. So once you park your car, then, you can take the electric fleet, which serves the Masdar city. You don't have to take out your own personal car. And then also we have other solutions as well. Okay. I'll come back to that. So see, these are the various modes of transportation which are available within Masdar city. That blue bus, the big one which we have developed along with the ITC, that was mainly to test the electric buses in this hot weather. And then this was our first generation of vehicle, which is the PRT. So this was launched in 2010. And this operates in the undercroft, that is in the dedicated corridor. We have been test bed for this technology especially, and it is still running. It has carried more than 3 million trips till today. And then we had tested the second generation of the vehicle, which is Navya, the blue shuttle. So this one, why we had, have this, and then we are introducing another generation of vehicle, why? Because this requires a dedicated infrastructure, whereas that doesn't require any dedicated infrastructure. So that's the difference between the first generation and the second generation of vehicle. And now we are exploring the third generation, where it can interact with the general traffic. And as I was stating earlier, that Abu Dhabi has already been set up as a global mobility hub in UAE, and they have already now deployed the cars, autonomous cars, which can interact with the general traffic. So coming back to this slide, I wanted to also show you, how the pedestrians and the cyclists are being promoted within Masdar city. We have the dedicated cycle track all along our streets. And also we have, as you can see, the overall master plan has been reoriented because of the solar studies. Sun travels from east to west, so the entire master plan has been oriented so that it has its own shading. And then at each and every plot level also we study what are the solar direction and how the wind is going to travel within. So once so that, it reduces that heat island effect within Masdar city. So that was our phase 1 for the autonomous fleet. That's the phase 2. And this is how like our podium looks like, and as you can see, these are very like, what was the traditional architecture for Abu Dhabi or for UAE or for the Middle East countries was like, compact neighborhoods. And that's exactly what we have. So we have very compact neighborhoods, the buildings are oriented, and we also create the funnel effect for the wind to travel so that you don't feel that hot when you are within Masdar city. So we have also been, we have unveiled this high-speed green hydrogen refueling station, which is H2Go, in partnership along with EDNOC. And we were also the first one to announce the first EV charging station. This is the fast charging stations, and that is located within Abu Dhabi. It's a very seamless, it's as similar as to any petrol pump. Basically, you come, you charge your vehicle, and you can pay with your credit card. So it's a very seamless technology which they have adopted, but we were the first ones to launch this service. And last but not the least is the Savi cluster. So we are also the home of the Savi cluster. Savi is basically the smart and the autonomous vehicles industry, and this is basically to transform the landscape of smart and autonomous vehicle, be it land, air, or sea. So we welcome everyone to come visit Masdar city and experience yourself, because this could be like, just the slides, but once you'll experience, you will notice that, yes, with the small changes, you can actually see how much difference it can make to our transportation solutions. Thank you. Anyone has any questions on? Yes.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with you for electrifying the transport sector when it comes to goods transport and even passenger. But the trend is more going on to the good transport because it's less risky, as you know. So. As Masdar City, do you have any preference, any research on adopting hydrogen in this case, or electrification from, electric power? Do you have any insight on which one is better, which one is more convenient? Because you covered both hydrogen and electricity.
Yeah.
So for this specific, because I totally agree with you, the fleet emission is very high and the difference is there. So when we are talking about heavy goods vehicle or heavy transportation vehicles, do you have a case where you can guide us on what is best and what is more convenient?
Yeah, definitely. If you look into hydrogen vehicle, like the buses, we have been testing for the hydrogen buses as well as the cars. The emissions from these hydrogen buses is just fumes only, nothing else, right? Whereas even the production of these buses or production of these fleet or vehicles is basically on electric fleet, it requires, like I was talking to one of the manufacturer, the very big manufacturer, they were saying actually to produce one electric car, it may require like, as a standard car is like 700 or 600 cars equivalent to that. And whereas the hydrogen ones, yes, you do require a lot of infrastructure for that as well, because you need to have your you need to have your the charging facility for these hydrogen vehicles, but hydrogen is much more clean, and we feel like hydrogen is basically the future, or there could be any other alternative mode of transportation. But the electric fleet, we are into the transition phase right now where we are saying, okay, electric is the upcoming future, but definitely we feel like until and unless the technology needs a lot of advancement in the electric fleets so far, although we all are talking about the range anxieties, we are talking about, okay, the capacitors will be changed and like no more lithium batteries, but we feel like hydrogen is the upcoming future rather than electric. All right? Thank you.